5.1 Presentation Preparation. As part of the presentation packet, your group will submit an outline in addition to your completed annotated bibliography with a link to your group grid. Your instructor will provide details on how to format the documents, and your group should revisit what was submitted in the P1 plan. Group grid should organize and categorize the important information about the sources your team explored, whether or not they made it into the final presentation. The annotated bibliography should organize and format how that content was summarized and how each member made sense of the content in preparation for the group presentation, including references for each article. The outline should include all the content as it will appear in the presentation. The outline discussed in 4.2 is useful, but make sure to follow any specific directions from your instructor in relation to the outline in the assignment, as well as the annotated bibliography in the grid, so that these resources can feed the presentation directly. Communicate with your instructor whenever you have questions through email or during office hours. For communication efficacy, prepare a list of questions in advance and make sure that you discuss these questions with the team members as well. Since both the annotated bibliography and the grid are different genres with very specific features, your instructor will be able to guide you through these features and explain the type of content and the expectations for the annotated bibliography entries. The presentation packet contains all the content, so once your team finalizes and submits the presentation packet, you can shift your attention to design and presentation. Your content and presentation should be designed with your broad audience in mind, but your class peers and your instructor are the direct audience. Your instructor will provide details for how the presentation should be submitted and delivered, so be clear on those requirements and expectations before you dive into design. Storage, organization, and analysis. Because most university-level writing assignments require the inclusion of source material, learning to work with sources is an important part of academic writing and research. As you find and read sources, it is important to have a method of storing and organizing the text so that you can find your way back to them and so that you have access to the pertinent information from each text. There are a number of methods for storing and organizing source material in relation to the collection and interpretation of content as part of the writing process. Some assignments include specific approaches for managing source material and require submission of these steps, but even when these steps are not assigned or assessed, all major writing assignments expect students to have their own methods of working with source material and to be able to do so independently. You and your team members have been collecting and compiling content as you engaged it, which is an important part of the research process. Now, as you revise and edit the content for submission as part of your presentation packet, it is worth thinking through the overall place and purpose that practices such as our bib and grid play not only in developing our presentation, but also in developing comprehension of the content. If you completed ENC 1101 at USF, you will be very well versed in practice with bibs and grids, but if you did not, they may be new to you. Annotated bibliographies. In general, storage and organization approaches, like outlining, can and should serve deeper aims of moving you towards a deeper understanding and comprehension of the source material. Writing an annotation, for instance, does store and organize source material and might even be submitted as part of an annotated bibliography, but it also serves to facilitate understanding and advance the writing process forward while creating material for the assignment. We have already practiced annotating while we read and writing an annotation based on our reading notes. Annotations can be compiled into an annotated bibliography, which is basically a reference page with a one-paragraph annotation of the source listed under each source. Some assignments require annotated bibliographies to be submitted, but even when not required, arranging your annotations in a searchable source, like an annotated bibliography, that can become your works cited when the annotations are removed, can be very helpful as you progress through your writing process. Writing an annotation allows the researcher to create a short piece of text that can be added to the final paper as is or modified as needed. Because the annotation has the main content of the source, the researcher will not need to revisit or reread each source and can simply access the annotation when constructing the paper. And again, the process of annotating the text and writing an annotation also allows the researcher to understand the text. Constructing an annotated bibliography is one recognized way to compile source material for storage, organization, and comprehension. But there are other approaches and other elements of the source material to consider. As we have learned, Annotations should be connected to the assignment. If the assignment only asks you to summarize source material, you can construct annotations that summarize each source. If the assignment calls for analysis, the annotation should include analysis too. If the assignment requires synthesis, that may be better left for the product than included in each annotation. But knowing that it is required in creating continuity in the approach to each annotation prepares you to see and state the connections required for successful synthesis. In addition to an overview of the pertinent elements of the content, researchers also need to locate other important information from each article. As you progress through your courses, your projects will expand in width and depth. To support the advancing research and writing requirements, students use software resources ranging from individual approaches in MS Office or Google Suite, which is what we have done in this project, to citation management software such as Zotero, EndNote, Mendeley, and RefWorks, which are available for free through USF. Some fields and departments suggest or require the adoption of specific tools or approaches. Whatever citation software or personal approach you use, it is important to have a plan from the start. Gridding. Approaches to storage and organization of source material that utilize technology can also deepen understanding by facilitating the visualization of data that can help reveal patterns and contribute to analysis. You and your team members have already been gridding your source material. Gridding is the process of arranging vital information from each source in a spreadsheet for storage, organization, and access. Like outlining and annotating, in addition to the concrete outcome of being able to locate source material, gridding also supports higher order intellectual skills like analysis and synthesis. A grid stores important pieces of information. While the specific information needed might shift with each assignment, major elements are always needed: author, article, title, journal, year. For the most part, these are the pieces of information that make up the reference for all academic formatting styles. When creating a grid, consider what information you will need for the reference page based on the style and assignment, and make sure you note all those elements. In addition to the concrete function of storing the important information about each source so that it can be located and included in the assignment, gridding serves a higher order function as well. Another important piece of information you will want to store in your grid is the thesis of each source you engage. The thesis is generally the most important element of the source, and the part you will need to include in your research and writing. Including the thesis in your grid guarantees that you read the source closely enough to identify the main idea and that you will be able to access it as needed. Gridding also allows researchers to apply techniques of analysis to the data to look for patterns. While summary, response, and reflection are important foundations of university-level work, analysis, synthesis, and creation are the intellectual skills most research aims to achieve. Remember Bloom's taxonomy. An annotated bibliography will allow you to compile your source material within paragraphs across a few pages, but gridding the same content will arrange the theses of all your source material in one place where you can see them all at once, which allows you to see the patterns in your material. If you read 10 sources, for instance, you will be able to see that all of the theses and arrange them in different orders to see if they tell a story or need more perspective. Take this sample from a previous FYC course. Scroll through the tabs along the bottom to see the different ways of seeing the material. If, for instance, you are compiling sources for literature review, and you look at them chronologically and notice that all your sources are from before the 1970s and after the 2010s, you will know that you should add some sources to fill in that gap so that you can trace the scholarly conversation over time. Or if you arrange the material by position and notice that all your sources agree and say the same thing, you would want to expand your search to look for a wider range of perspectives to locate an ongoing research conversation. Similarly, if you're researching a topic and you see that the non-academic sources share a similar thesis, while the scholarly sources share a similar but very different thesis, you will be able to consider whether there is a disconnect between the public and academic perspectives, which will open you to a research question you can dive in and analyze. Recognizing that disconnect within the limited sources you likely included in your grid would not provide enough evidence to make the claim, but the process of analysis of data usually begins with the goal of identifying questions and constructing testable hypotheses. Gridding can support a number of types of analysis and synthesis, which will be an important part of Project 2. But for our current assignment, analysis is not the goal. So you want to practice gridding important information for storage and organization and as a means of collaboration. Most importantly, you want to use a grid to view all the potential sources in one place so that your team can determine which pieces support which claims best and in which order. As you encounter different writing assignments and research expectations in other courses, remember that there are other tools and techniques to support your storage, organization, and comprehension of source material. And remember that the things you grid, just like the things you read when you annotate, should be defined by the assignment and intention of the research you are undertaking, as well as the format you will be using to cite your work. Hopefully, practice with grids and bibs will allow you to expand and personalize your practice of engaging source content so that it can become part of your personal writing process. Once your team selects the best material and arranges it in the best order, you are ready to start developing it with presentation in mind and in the space that will be used for the group presentation. Presentation design. Different design elements are available depending on the details of the presentation in the software. Some of the construction has to occur in the software, but the content can be finalized in the outline and copy and pasted in any software to be formatted and supplemented. Many aspects and skills related to individual presentations apply to group presentations, but group presentations are distinct in some ways. Every team member should participate in the development and delivery of the presentation, so each person should be aware of the sections or slides they will develop and narrate. Every team member should also review the final cut and send it to others to make sure it is accessible across platforms upon delivery. All members will not necessarily play the same role. Some members may focus on research or development more than narration, but all members should speak. If individual members are responsible for developing or narrating specific slides, part of the planning should be to consider continuity in design and construction. During review, elements such as transitions, volume, color, text, and pace should all be considered in order to polish a final product that looks professional and doesn't distract your audience from the focus, which is the argument. Many aspects of delivering live presentations also apply to asynchronous digital presentations, but tailoring your presentation for delivery online requires considering how your audience will receive the presentation. Without the in-person expectations of an audience, your group presentation should consider how to hold the attention of your audience and engage each viewer. If you upload a PowerPoint with recorded narration for asynchronous viewing, your viewers might click through the presentation at their own pace. But if you use Google Slides with screencasting software, the presentation will play as a video they may need to pause or review. Consider whether you want your audience to engage your presentation by controlling the movement with a click, or whether you want to build in structure that brings attention to elements at specific points throughout the video in order to keep your viewers active. And do not overlook the need for closed captioning and any general considerations of auditory access. While captioning is important for accessibility, it is also a great way to engage all your viewers, many of whom will benefit from access to the text. Any of the visual elements in the presentation can complement the message and support the position or distract from comprehension and decrease efficacy. If you include a video recording of yourself in an embedded webcam image or a full image of you as you speak, you become part of the visual design of the presentation through nonverbal, gestural, movement, eye contact, poise, posture, body language, appearance, elements of the communication. In addition to sights, sounds matter. Verbal communication, volume, clarity, diction, pace, intonation, has a clear impact on the presentation, but any music, videos, or noises will be impacted by the recording quality in the device your audience uses to watch your presentation. Elements that impact how your audience receives the content can facilitate and enhance the intention of the presentation and support your argument or impede access and understanding of content and distract from your argument. After recording, all team members should review the presentation in full to experience how it all works individually, as each member presents content and collectively as the presentation progresses through the slides from one presenter to the next. All considerations around presentation, content, design, and delivery should reflect the specifics of audience and situation, so they will need to be tailored accordingly. But awareness of some basic elements of visual design will be useful for this and other presentations. Visual design. Learning the basics of visual design is an important skill for presentations in this class and other coursework and beyond your courses. To begin, think about the layout and design of individual slides. A slide deck is often used for face-to-face or synchronous online presentations, but with the addition of narration, slides can be used for online asynchronous presentations as well. Some software even includes functionality that allows the slides to be viewed as a video. There are a number of general considerations that can help you and your team avoid creating slides that distract from the content or delivery, and prepare well-designed slides that contribute to the delivery and facilitate an audience's positive response to a presentation. As you design and review your presentation, considering the following elements. Text on a slide. Your presentation should have minimal text per slide, generally no more than 3 brief sentences plus a brief slide title. Some presenters copy-paste their entire talk into slides, often because they didn't plan enough time to spend on design. Too much text is not effective and will encourage presenters and audience members to read directly from the slides. Also, avoid all capital letters, which makes the text more difficult to read. General readability of slides is important for in-person synchronous and asynchronous presentation, so consider all elements of delivery. Also pay attention to how what your audience sees, and what they hear work together or compete against each other. The default font size is 24 point, which is acceptable for in-person or digital presentations. Larger font can be used to emphasize important phrases or ideas. Font. Many presentation creation programs, like Microsoft PowerPoint, Apple Keynote, or Google Slides, come with default fonts. Default fonts are usually chosen because they are sans serif fonts, which are easier to read because they don't contain design features at the end of each letter. Common sans serif fonts include Arial and Calibri. Even Comic Sans is a sans serif font. Some writers may choose other fonts for emphasis, aesthetics, or even because an organization has an expected font. At USF, for example, the official font is Trade Gothic. Writing. Writing and presentation should be concise, formal, and academic. Because space on presentation slides is limited, each slide should focus on a main idea. If your instructor doesn't provide clear direction on using formal language in complete sentences, default to formal language in complete sentences. Signal phrases are also valuable, and attribution of direct source material, including images, is required. Bulleted points and bulleted lists. Many presentations use bulleted lists to express multiple main points per slide. Using bullets to separate and highlight content can be useful for conveying information, and while bullets shouldn't be followed by too many or too long sentences, just dropping in a few words that you plan to explain isn't enough, because each slide should only have a few brief sentences that emphasize the main point. Including a full bulleted list will make your slide overwhelming for readers to understand and encourage you to skim over and through the list. To facilitate audience awareness in your design, think of yourself as an audience member. How many bullet points do you read before you quit reading or start skimming? Also, ask your team members what works for them when they are an audience member. Most of us read only a few bullet points of text, so avoid using long bulleted lists. Animation. Simple animations can make your presentation appear more professional and can facilitate attention and comprehension. If you have 3 points on your slide, you can click to introduce each separately as you discuss that point, which helps your audience stay with you instead of reading ahead, and make sure you don't skim over some content quickly, which is very easy to do. Bringing in text on a click also helps you maintain spacing and pacing. Consider using the appear or fade in features to emphasize main points or progression of ideas in a presentation. Over-animating, however, can be distracting, so avoid applying effects that distract your audience instead of highlight your main ideas. Animations that cause terms to fly in or pinwheel terms across the screen can be distracting. Color and contrast. Many presentations use a black and white color scheme because black text against a white background is generally easy to read. If you decide to use other color schemes, think through why you are making this choice. Some people choose to change the color scheme to match the colors of the organization they are writing for or about. For example, when you're picking an alternative color scheme, keep these tips in mind. Pick colors with high contrast. Contrast is the difference between colors. High contrast means that there is a great difference between colors, like white and black. Using high contrast colors for the background and the text generally makes the slides easier to read. Avoid inaccessible color combinations. People respond differently to the use of colors in a presentation. Too many colors, or even overusing one very bright color, can seem overwhelming to some readers. Other readers may have a form of color blindness. Design for accessibility by limiting the colors you use to 3, limiting your use of very bright colors, and limiting the amount of these color combinations: red and green, green and brown, green and blue, blue and gray, blue and purple, green and gray, and green and black. According to Venn-Gage, people with color blindness may find these combinations difficult to read. Background. Much of the advice you learned about presentation colors applies here. Select a background color with high contrast to your text color. Avoid backgrounds with distracting visual details. Many programs give you themes with preset background images like kittens or flowers. Unless you are presenting on kittens or flowers, avoid using these and other preset themes because they can distract your audience from the main point of your presentation. Sound. Use sound consciously and carefully. Be sparing with your use of sounds to avoid the possibility of technical difficulties and to avoid limiting accessibility for your audience. Technical difficulties, in many cases, sound may not be configured correctly on the device your audience will use. The sound may not play at all, or it may play at the wrong volume. To mitigate these problems, all of your team members should try to test sound by watching your presentation on a range of different devices. Audience accessibility. Some members of your audience may be hard of hearing or uncomfortable around sudden noises. Providing a text description for in-person presentations that notes sound in your presentation, or making your audience aware before a sound occurs in your presentation, can make your presentation more accessible to the audience and understandable to all members. Video. Do not include videos unless they are directly relevant to the content and display something that deepens comprehension and cannot be explained in words alone. Avoid playing videos that show someone speaking or delivering content that you could be delivering. A video should show or do something that you can't say or do, and should expand comprehension and facilitate persuasion. If you are including a video in your presentation, have a transcript or description of your video in your presentation. Image integration. Use images that build on words and concepts from the presentation, but do what words cannot. If you were talking about bees, show a picture of the bees you were talking about. Recognize that people will need time to look at the picture, so give them time and engage them by talking about elements of the image. Don't overlook attribution and use open images. Including tangentially related stock images is unlikely to contribute to your argument or presentation and may actually distract your audience. Methods for including alt text for images vary, but all major resources should provide you with an option. Data visualizations. Data visualizations help you present data for a specific audience. Numbers don't speak for themselves. Data visualizations require critical and rhetorical thought. Including specific images that engage the content you are delivering can make a good presentation a great presentation. The best visualizations may be the ones you create. To make a data visualization, start with these steps. Think about the rhetorical situation of your presentation. What do you want to convince the audience to think or do? Try to understand your audience. To convince your audience that your main points are important to them, you need to know what information they need to make that decision. Number 3, think of points of data that can lend themselves to visualization, such as numbers, and think of the specific evidence in your presentation. Number 4, consider using and possibly creating charts, graphs, or illustrations with small amounts of text to highlight your main points. Again, think of yourself as an audience member reading a slide full of numbers and how happy you are when a bar graph, line graph, or a pie chart appears to help you make sense of the numbers. Because you have control over what data to include and how to arrange and present it, created images can be especially effective when used rhetorically to enhance your argument. There are many free programs that you can use to make data visualizations. Canva, Piktochart, and Easily are great options. Venn-Gage is another option, and Adobe Spark and Adobe Premiere Rush are accessible tools to use and free for USF students. If you do not want to learn a new program, Microsoft PowerPoint, Google Slides, Microsoft Excel, and Apple Keynote can also make data visualizations, but their capabilities are limited. To make a chart or a graph, start with a data set. You can create a data set using your grid or information from a survey or interviews that has been exported to Excel or Sheets. And you can access data sets online. Data sets that are relevant to a number of topics are available at 4 different websites. Once you have your data set, you can create a chart or graph in Google Sheets, Microsoft Office, or Apple Numbers. After you have made your chart or graph, save it as a picture and insert it into your presentation. If you're not sure how to do that on your device, type "Save a chart as a picture" into an internet search bar. You can also collect data through a survey in Google Forms, for instance, and then use the application to produce images of your data. Screenshotting can also be useful, and there are also websites where you can create memes. Paint, PowerPoint, and slides include functions that allow you to manipulate images to a limited degree. If you don't have a Microsoft Office, you can download the software from USF IT here. Keep in mind that data visualizations do not necessarily speak for themselves, so you should integrate a description of the image into your presentation script. It may include captions that accurately describe what the visualization shows specifically and why it is important for your audience to see and understand. Access. Your instructor will provide detailed directions for the delivery of your presentation. Just as the software you use to deliver the presentation will impact your construction, the mode of delivery is also worth considering and testing. Access across team members is also an important element of construction. Cloud. Google Slides can be accessed from any computer but will require an internet connection and a password for access. Other applications have online access or can be stored in Dropbox or other cloud-based spaces, all of which will require internet access. Email. Sending an email of the presentation to all team members allows any member to access the slides. Most devices automatically block downloads from opening. To unblock, right-click on the file in Downloads or Desktop, click Property, then click Unblock at the bottom of the pop-up window. You will then be able to open the file. Teams. You can also use the file sharing option in Teams. It is located in the left menu of the Teams app under Call. Your team will also want to consider the specifics of how the presentation will be delivered to your audience. Accessibility. Considerations of accessibility should be included in the visual design decisions. Audiences include a range of members with a variety of different eyes and ears and bodies and experiences. Thinking about these differences and about general preferences is an important element of strong design that can appeal to a broad audience. Simple design tips like the ones above can help you design a presentation that works for as many individuals as possible. Just like teams benefit from diverse perspectives, designing for diverse audiences results in presentations that are more effective to all members. Also, preparing copies of your team's transcript or speaker notes to share with your audience before you begin speaking can be helpful for in-person and online presentations. Not only does this help everyone participate in your presentation, it guarantees that your team is organized and prepared before you record. Consider everyone benefits everyone. Delivery. Delivery impacts presentations that are live as well as synchronous and asynchronous presentations online. Obvious elements like recording, sound quality, lighting, and background can enhance or distract. And while a strong slide design can enhance the efficacy of any presentation, human interaction and engagement is at the heart of a presentation. Using your voice is an important element of your delivery, and when possible, include video of team members. In general, consider the visual elements listed above and any verbal, volume, clarity, diction, pace, intonation, or nonverbal, gesturing, movement, eye contact, posture, poise, body language, appearance, elements that impact delivery and help engage your viewers. Audience engagement. Strong speakers engage with the audience throughout the presentation. There are a number of techniques to help presenters hold an audience's attention and can be tailored for in-person and online delivery. Making eye contact with audience members during your talk will engage them. When recording a presentation, be sure to look directly at the camera if you and your team have decided to appear on camera so that your audience can share digital eye contact with you. Lighting, background, and clothing can also impact audience engagement. Purposeful gesturing can engage an audience, but unintentional movements that result from nerves can be distracting. Recording yourself is a great way to learn your nervous gestures and practice containing them or compensating with intentional movement that appears natural. While you can't ask your audience questions or have them share opinions during the presentation, you can still find ways to engage your viewers and can even encourage them to pause and consider a point being made. and you and your team can consider potential questions your audience may ask or ask reviewers to watch your presentation before it is due and let you know if they have any questions, and then you can build that information into your presentation. Remember to change your facial expression and voice pitch as you talk. You may need to exaggerate your facial expression or voice pitch to stimulate interest in your presentation. Smiling or using a sarcastic tone helps indicate to the audience that you're making a joke, while a serious expression and tone help indicate that your topic is very important. YouTube influencers have specific delivery practices to engage their audience. While adding some of the personality and humor you may be familiar with from experience with this genre, remember that your group presentation is a formal academic assignment. Speaker notes and script. In general, determining how you will give your presentation requires you to consider what you know about yourself as a speaker and what your audience expects. Some assignments may integrate delivery elements ranging from in-person to synchronous and asynchronous delivery. Content delivery and engagement that utilizes a high-flex format, hybrid flexible formats that allow individuals to participate in person and/or online are becoming more common. As we continue to integrate digital spaces into our school, work, and personal lives, working to integrate tools and techniques across platforms and modalities will not only prepare you all for all options, it will also make the work you do in each space stronger. Depending on the assignment and delivery format, instructors and audience may expect you to have large portions of your presentations memorized and will only tolerate limited speaker notes. Other audiences may not mind if you write out a script for your presentation and read it aloud, as long as you look up often straight at the camera to show your audience that you are engaging with them. Some situations call for you to go off script and speak freely about content you are comfortable with and know well, but that does not usually happen during asynchronous presentations with a voiceover and content you can edit and record as many times as you want. If you are presenting live, it can help to use a presentation script. Having something to read aloud and refer back to may help alleviate your anxiety. If you are recording, a script is a requirement. Practice with the notes as much as possible and try to get to the point where you only use bullet points for a few main ideas to stay on track as you present. Recording a practice round is also a useful way to see and hear how you are using the notes and how to optimize rising and falling intonation. If you are giving a face-to-face presentation, avoid going up to speak with no notes or outline at all. Failing to prepare for presentations can result in a disorganized argument or a long, rambling talk that impacts your credibility with your audience. A lack of preparation and practice can also increase anxiety before and during presentations. Pace. Practice your speaking speed before your presentation. Speak more slowly than you think you need to because you will likely speed up during the presentation. And remember that you should slow down even more since you are delivering content digitally. Emphasize the beginnings of sentences by speaking up. Consider highlighting main points with hand gestures or even noting important elements explicitly. Practicing the spacing and pacing of any presentation is important. Ethos. Maintaining a credible, trustworthy ethos as a presenter helps you present more effectively. Keeping in mind that implicit bias affects many audience members, so some people may think that some speakers are more credible than others, but just as your content and presentation delivery can make you appear less credible, a well-organized presentation with strong and cited content that is delivered with confidence can go a long way to earn audiences' trust. Sharing a personal anecdote, when appropriate, can make your audience relate to you and appreciate your experience and perspective. Also, avoiding absolute language or a tone that is too impassioned can make you appear more measured. Questions. Questions are normal in class presentations, and they can be asked during or at the closing of the delivery. Since you will deliver the presentation online asynchronously, taking questions and answering them will only happen after everyone has access to your file. Your instructor may include questions as part of the follow-up to your presentations. Offering clear, concise answers is a great practice. After providing your answer, it is also professional to ask the person who asked the question if your response answered their questions. In longer or more complex presentations, answering questions becomes an important part of the presentation. Short presentation assignments generally don't involve difficult questions, and your instructor and peers are on your side, so there is no need to worry about difficult questions from audience members. If you do encounter questions that seem confrontational in other situations, however, you are always free to state that the question isn't relevant to the matter at hand. Questions that are generally aimed at alleviating confusion or deepening comprehension are always a welcome sign of audience engagement. But questions that are really just comments often suggest that the asker is not open to learn anyway. Collaboration. All team members should contribute to the presentation, and your team should practice it together beforehand. Online presentations require more elaborate and organized collaboration. Use shared docs, synchronous meeting times, strict organization, and responsibility delegation. When you are practicing, discuss how comfortable each team member is with presenting. If a team member is not very comfortable speaking to the camera, consider discussing how the rest of the team might help your peer feel better about presenting and how each member can participate in ways that play to individual strengths and increase the overall quality of your delivery. Overall, presenting to a group and with a group is a skill, and it can be improved considerably with practice. Everybody can improve, and building confidence builds confidence. Loving to give presentations isn't necessary, but being able to do it well is an important skill. We are all presenting ourselves and our ideas and our work every day in some ways, so practicing some basic elements that can improve outcomes for everyone on every side of formal and informal presentations is a valuable investment. Finalize your group's presentation packet with the design in mind. After you review all the elements of your presentation pack and submit it as a group assignment in Canvas, use that content along with the information in this reading to design and develop your presentation and any accompanying digital or software elements and expectations. Remember that USF students have access to Microsoft Office 365, which includes PowerPoint and Microsoft SharePoint online. You also have access to slides through your Google account, which you can present and record synchronously with your team in Teams. Assignment 5.1. Upload the presentation pack as a group assignment. Include an annotated bibliography and your group grid with all the readings from all team members, and include an outline of all the content that will be included in the group presentation, including a link that does not provide access to your content will not be counted as an on-time submission. Additional directions may be provided by your instructor.